Hey guys, so this is going to be just a quick tutorial on using scanners to get input. For this tutorial, we're going to make a quick program that takes a string input from a user and reverses it, and then it'll quit whenever we enter a certain combination of characters. Alright, so to get started with scanners, we're going to have to create a new instance of a scanner class. So scanner, I'm going to call this scan. Scanner scan equals new scanner. We'll pass that system.in. So now right away you'll notice that this is giving an error. That's because scanner is something that needs to be imported. I'm going to use the Eclipse quick fix here, but if you're doing that, make sure you get java.util. I'm going to click import scanner java.util, and you'll see up if you're not using Eclipse, you can just type this in, import java.util.scanner. And now the errors are gone and we're good to go ahead and get started. So first off, how does this work? Well, just to show it real quick, I'm going to make a system.out.println and we'll say scan.next. That's going to get the next thing, input. That's going to get the first piece of input. So we'll run this, and now it's waiting for input here because we called that scan. I can type in test and it's going to print test. Now, the problem with using next is that you'll see here, so I'm typing in two words here, test string, but it only got this first one, test. So to get around to get a full string in Java, we're going to need to use the scan.test line, or next line, I'm sorry. So now we can run this again, and we can see test string gets printed out. Test string is good to go. So, all right. So now we want to be able to get this. We want user input on a loop, like until we say let's stop getting input. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to make a prompt first. So we'll say enter a string, or I'm going to use 2 exclamation points here as my quit. So whenever they want to quit, they're going to enter 2 exclamation points. Enter a string or exclamation, or those 2 exclamation points to quit. And then save that. And then down here we're going to declare a string. User input equals scan dot next line. So that's going to store the string that the user inputs into a variable user input. And then just to show that that works, we'll run this. You can see the prompt is here, enter a string or exclamation points to quit, and we're printing. So now the next thing we want to do is, well, we want to take this on a loop. So we want to keep getting user input. So while in Java, remember, while and then a conditional statement in parentheses. While user input. Okay, so here, remember that this is a string. We're working with strings here. So I can't say equals equals exclamation point. That's not going to work. I need dot equals. And we'll pass that, those 2 exclamation points. And now we have a while loop, but okay, so problem here is while user input equals that, so we just want to say not. So while this is false, while the user input does not equal those 2 exclamation points. So while this is going on, let's go ahead and, just for test purposes, we're going to print out user input, but then we want to make sure that we get that user input again. If we don't get that, it's just going to be an infinite loop there. So now we can run this, enter a string, see it's printing out test, and then we can type in something else. It prints out something else, and now we can hit the exclamation points, and then that quits. So, all right, so another thing we want to do is, I'm going to take out this print because we're not going to use that one specifically. We'll go ahead and keep that at the bottom. I'm going to open up some space to do some stuff in this while loop. So first thing I want to do here is just show the user what they printed. If you see, I'm typing in S out in Eclipse. You can type in that S out in lowercase and then hold Control and space and press space, and then that'll do the print line. But actually, you know what? I'm going to use print F here because I want to print a formatted string. I'm going to say U entered, and then for a string we're using %S, comma, user input. Then that'll print out the same thing. Actually, I want to put since printf doesn't have the new line at the end, I'm going to go ahead and put that in myself, which is \n. So now we can see you entered test. You entered hello. You entered test string. Okay, perfect. So now we have a loop that's getting input, and it's waiting for a certain input to quit. So now the next thing we want to do, I'm printing a string in reverse here. That's my goal for this program. So I'll type in my answer prompt. So we'll say string in reverse. And I'm actually going to put a new line in front of this, just to have some space, just to format it a little bit better. All right, so now we want to iterate through this string. So how do we get through a string here? Well, I'm going to use a for loop. So in Java, we can go int I equals 0, semicolon, and then our condition for when we exit the loop. So actually, I is less than. We're going to use user input.length, and then what do we do to I every time? What do we do to our variable? We're going to iterate it there. All right. Need the parentheses around that length. All right, so now we have a for loop that's iterating for every character in our string. Okay, so now we want to be able to store this input string into another variable. So I'm going to go up actually outside of here. And I'm going to make a new string. Call it reversed, R-E-V-E-R. Almost forgot how to spell that. And just make it blank for now. So, okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm going forward through the string. That's not actually what I want to do. I'm thinking for this, I'll go for each character in this, I'll store it into reversed, but I want to start at the end of the string. So actually, I'm going to say minus minus here. And here I'm going to say greater than or equal to 0. And int I is going to start at user input.length. So this way, I starts at user input.length. When I reaches -1, really, then we'll break out of this loop. But until then, we'll subtract 1 from I. So if user input is 5 characters long, it'll be 5, and then we'll subtract. I will be 5, and then we'll subtract 1 for every iteration through the loop. So now in here, all I have to do is store that into my reverse string. So reversed equals, actually plus equals, we're concatenating that onto there. And then we'll say user input, and we can't use index into a string in Java. That's not going to work. We're going to have to say dot char at I, and that's going to get the character in the I position of user input. So now we have our reverse string stored and reversed. So all we got to do is come outside of the loop. Whenever it gets to the end of this reversed, it's going to exit the whenever it gets to the end of the user input, it'll come out of the loop. So we can say we're just going to print reversed. And so string in reverse, we do the reversal, then we print out the result. Then, since we're doing a loop here, we want to make sure we reset that. Otherwise, it'll carry values from last time, and we don't want that. So reversed is now an empty string. And then, okay, so since we got to the end here, we want to put our prompt in again. All right, so let's give this a run, see if I made any mistakes here. Enter a string, or there's 2 exclamation points to quit. I did make a mistake. So where did I make a mistake? That's in my for loop. Index out of range 4. All right. So remember, strings are strings are indexed at 0 in this. So we start counting from 0. So 4 is out of the length of a length 4 string. So it's actually 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to go back into my for loop, and I'm just going to subtract 1 from my starting value of I. And then now we should run this. It says test. You entered test. String in reversed. Reverse. That worked. Perfect. And it's still it's prompting me for another string. So why not? Let's give it a try. Reversing strings is cool. Nice, it worked. So now, if we want to get out of this loop, all we got to do is hit those 2 exclamation points. And you know what? Let's put in a nice, just so we know that we exited successfully. And actually, you know what? I don't like how this runs together here. So I'm going to put another new line at the beginning of that. So we can run this, enter a string. You entered. This is a string. Good. String in reverse. Generts sit, I guess. All right. And one more time just to test. Very good. Exclamation points to quit. Goodbye. And we're done. So that was getting user input using scanner. That was using a while loop to control how long we loop over the input, and that's using a for loop to go through the characters in a user input string. So one thing to remember is we use the next line for the string, but if you want integers or something like that, you'll have to use something like next int. If you want doubles, you have to use next double, and so on. You can look through the available methods there. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful.